Welcome back to Dom's Roundtable, my friends. I am your host Dom, and today I have brought you 15 more tips to help improve your gameplay in Stalker 2. You loved my ultimate beginner guide, racking up over 100,000 views in just a couple of days. So I thought I'd now help you also tackle the late game, when a lot more options open up to you and the game gets significantly more difficult. And one more thing I want to say before we jump into the first tip is thank you so very much for 250,000 subscribers to Dom's Roundtable. Whether you are brand new to the channel or you've been around since the Dead by Daylight and Mountain Blade days, I really truly appreciate the support of every single person who deems my content worthy of hitting subscribe. Thank you so much, and here's to the continued road to 1 million. Alrighty, let's get straight into it and start with the first thing that you need to stop doing to get better at Stalker 2, and that is in fact using armor-piercing bullets. This goes for other bullet types too, like flat or expansive, depending on the gun you're using, and I will tell you why you shouldn't be using them in just a second. But first, I know this might sound like terrible advice initially, because they do more damage and there's great benefit to some of these bullets, and I know that they can obviously make fights less painful, but if you've got a good build with powerful weapons, solid armor, and complementary artifacts, you don't need to use special bullet types, and they could be detrimenting you. The reason you shouldn't be using them is because, as it states on the item descriptions, this will make your guns wear faster. And I mean much faster, considering you are going to be bursting through so much ammo in this game. And in the late game, when you have super powerful weapons, they can cost nearly 100,000 coupons to fully repair. And at any stage in the game, that is a lot of money to be wasting on repairs. So honestly, stick to regular bullets, at least for your super powerful guns. They do enough damage already, and you really can't afford to be fully repairing them after every single mission. Trust me, it's much more beneficial to have your guns lasting a lot longer using regular ammo, which is pretty much always going to get the job done just as efficiently, especially if your aim is at least somewhat on point. Before we get into the next section, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Stalker and S.T.A.L.K.E.R, as I introduce Warhammer Vermintide 2's brand new game mode, Versus. I was so excited to see this sponsorship land on my desk. I adore Vermintide, I have countless hours in it, and I've always wanted to be able to play as the baddies, as the Skaven, and now we can. In Versus, you will take turns playing as the heroes and the Pact Sworn across 5 brand new levels available at launch, in order to obtain loads of new rewards, including Pact Sworn cosmetics, weapon illusions, and so much more. So if you've ever wanted to skulk around the inaccessible nooks and crannies of Vermintide as the sneaky Skaven and show those pesky heroes who's really the best around, there has never been a better time to jump into Vermintide 2 than right now. So start playing today using my link below in the comments and the description, and I'll see you in game as we tackle the weekly community challenges to earn even more exclusive rewards. The next tip is to stop neglecting your stash. Now, I know that in the early game you don't get that much loot, so especially if you took my advice from my beginner guide to not be a hoarder, it's very easy to not use your stash and still be completely fine, which is exactly what I did. However, the late game in Stalker 2 is a completely different beast altogether for a few main reasons. Firstly, as I said, repairing your equipment is damn expensive. So sometimes when you come back from a few back-to-back missions, you may physically not be able to repair all of your equipment, and if you are left with 2 severely damaged guns, you could really screw yourself over for the next period of time whilst you're trying to get back into the swing of things. So it's always great to have a few backup weapons in your stash, even if they've just been looted from enemies and they've got around 40 to 50% durability. It's still better than completely broken weapons because they won't jam quite as often. Me personally, I like to try and have a full backup set in my stash that I can swap between in case of emergencies. And talking about this, I'm not just talking about weapons. You basically want full copies of everything that you might want to take out into the field with you. Try not to sell too much ammo, because you'll probably find in a few hours time you need to buy it all back again anyway, and you've just wasted a load of money. Even if it's ammo for gun types you very infrequently use, you sometimes may need to rely on them as a last resort because they're your only weapons left that actually have any durability left. Basically, get used to swapping out your loadout and not always using the most efficient guns or your favorite guns, because durability is a real bitch in Stalker 2. The next tip is to stop running around with your guns out. I know you want to be always prepared for a fight, but there is something far more important you should be doing, and that is running around with your bolts and your scanner out so that you don't miss out on any artifacts. This is another tip that goes completely against what I advised in my beginner guide for very good reason. In the mid to late game, artifacts start to become really valuable. Just to give you a couple of examples, if you encounter an acid pool in a high level area, chances are you might encounter the urchin artifact, and this will offset a moderate amount of radiation, meaning you can now wield other artifacts that will inflict you with radiation and completely offset the negative, allowing you to just benefit from the positives. And to give you a very specific example, because the urchin is offsetting a moderate amount of radiation, that means you can equip 2 minor or 1 moderate artifacts. This is one of my absolute favorite combinations here, because this is going to increase your carry capacity, which, as we know, is a real pain point in Stalker 2. You are always running out of carry capacity. So using these 2 artifacts in tandem means you aren't suffering from any additional radiation poisoning, but you are getting a big boost to the amount of weight that you can carry. Another thing I should note, another don't, but I'll bundle it in with this tip, is don't use your starting scanner. It is absolutely horrendous. Wait until at least your first or second upgrade before you start artifact hunting. It makes it so much easier. The next tip is to basically stop being a nice guy. There are so many different ways to approach and resolve every situation in Stalker 2, and ideally you want to try and achieve every single outcome of a situation all at once. You are very heavily rewarded for screwing everyone over, and I truly advise doing so. You are rewarded so much so, in fact, for being an asshole, that I kind of wish there was a hidden achievement to do the entire game without killing a single innocent person who didn't deserve it, because it's so rewarding to do just that. Let me give you a couple of examples. Basically, there's one quest very early on in the game where you have to go and find someone's religious icon. However, someone else who has helped you find it says, actually, bring it back here to me and I will buy it off you. So what you can do is you can go and sell it to them, then you can shoot them in the face, take it back, and go give it to the original quest giver for an additional reward. And you basically want to adopt this approach for everyone and everything you can in the game. If ever there are 2 groups of people that you can play against each other, do exactly that, and then if possible kill them all so you can loot them and sell all their equipment as well. And talking of not being a nice guy, this next tip fits that theme perfectly. And this is to stop selling your items to people and then just allowing them to go on their merry way. Who would do that? Have you not thought how much more profitable it would be to sell your items to someone and then kill them and take your items back again? This is exactly what you should do every time you find a friendly group of people wandering around the zone. Unfortunately, you can't do this in main settlements where their coupons are unlimited, but you will frequently find people wandering around the zone with exactly 700 coupons ready to spend. Go and sell loads and loads of your little bits to them to try and make it up to as close as 700 as possible, so you're now 700 coupons richer. Then kill them. You can loot all of the stuff you just sold to them, as well as their equipment. Then you can go and sell that to a settlement. And trust me, 700 coupons here and there may not sound like much, but with their equipment as well, you're probably getting around 1,500. And if you do that 10 times, that's 15,000 coupons. It really adds up. You really need that extra money in the late game. So be an absolute bastard. Just fuck everyone over as much as you can, and you will be far less poor in the late game. This next tip I personally think is absolutely huge. This is potentially the most important one in the whole video, and this ties in directly with selling stuff, but specifically talking about settlements. So this next tip is not to just go and find the first shop you can at a settlement and then sell all of your goodies. Because if you didn't know, different shopkeepers will actually offer you different amounts for your items. So you really do want to shop around. For example, if I show you what I'd get for a few items at this vendor here, I'm getting like 15 coupons for a sausage. This really awesome gun I'd get about 7.5k from, which seems like a decent amount, right? However, if I literally walk down the corridor to someone else, now I'm getting 23 coupons per sausage. That's a good coupon to sausage ratio, if you ask me. And look at that, 11,500 for this gun. This is insane, and these two vendors literally seconds apart. So especially if you're in a settlement with like 3 or 4 vendors, such as this one here, definitely you want to look at one item in your inventory, see what price that sells for with all the vendors, and whichever vendor gives you the highest price for that item, all other items will follow suit. So it's not like the bartender will give you more for food items and the armory will give you more for weapons. It's as simple as whoever gives you the most bang for your buck for one item, they will be the most profitable person for every item. So I always check the sausage to coupon ratio now whenever I enter a new settlement. This next tip is quite niche. It only applies to weapons that you reload one bullet or one shell at a time, which I think is probably only pump action shotguns from what I've seen. And even then, some of them you can get a full magazine attachment. However, I still think it's worth noting because the shotgun you're seeing me use now is the best shotgun in the game. It's a unique reward at the end of a very challenging quest line. And this tip is basically specifically for this gun, which I advise you get and use as often as possible. It's incredible. I don't want to spoil it though. All I will say is the word tyrant. So Google tyrant if you haven't done this quest and you want to do this quest, but I won't say anything more than that because I don't want to spoil it for you. But anyway, sorry, rant over. The tip here is to not let your pump action shotguns run out of ammo. Do not use the last bullet in the magazine. It takes significantly longer to reload. So always keep track of your ammo count and always reload before you use that last shell. You are going to reload so much faster. This next tip is for everyone who struggles to grab the loot out of the ammo, health and food boxes I spoke about in my first tips video. This tip is don't jump around like a bunny trying to grab all of the loot from inside the box. It may seem like that's the only thing you can do to try and grab that last tin of beans, but actually you can just smash the whole box open and just grab the loot from it that way. It's so much easier. Honestly, I spent hours jumping up and down trying to grab that last carton of condensed milk before I realized I could just smash the whole box open and just grab the loot that way. Just do that. It's so much easier. The next tip is about broken weapons. In my beginner guide, I advise you to just bin off all your broken weapons because you can't sell them. I still stick by that until you reach a certain point in the game because you definitely do not want to be running around overloaded all the time. It will cause you so many unnecessary deaths. People recommending that to other people in the comments is just, it's so early in the game. You do not need to hoard your broken weapons. You're going to make the game so much more stressful for yourself than you need to. However, when you get around halfway through the game, all I will say is S.T.A.L.K.E.R. When you've done the S.T.A.L.K.E.R bit of the quest line, again, not going to spoil anything, you will then progress to a new region, and in this region is an NPC called Ragman, and he will allow you to sell your broken guns to him. So at around the midpoint of the game, if you wish, you can start hoarding your broken weapons. You can then go there and sell them to him for a bit of a cash injection. Please note though, don't sell anything else to him because the rates he offers you are abysmal and you're still going to get pennies for most of your guns, but it's better than nothing. All your coupons will add up and it's worth keeping in the back of your mind as you progress to around the 25-30 hour mark of the game, depending on how much side content you've been doing. So yeah, basically this tip, don't sell anything to Ragman, but do sell your broken guns to Ragman. because he's the only person you can sell broken guns to, and it's better than nothing, right? This next tip is all about the emission. As you get further into the game, the emissions will get longer, the emissions will get more frequent, and it's very easy to get caught out. So this tip is twofold. Firstly, don't ever forget where your nearest shelter is. Always try and keep at least one building in view that is fully sealed on all sides, because quite a few houses that look like they might be shelters aren't shelters, and there is absolutely no way to out-heal the emission. I have tried it. I got a stack of 90 scientific medkits and I just sat there spamming the heal button. Eventually it starts dealing damage to you so quick that it will kill you in one animation of using the medkit. You physically have to find shelter, you cannot heal through it. So that's the first tip. The second part of this tip is when you are in a shelter and you aren't taking damage from the emission, don't move. You may get antsy, you may want to go and have a look at it, but do not move, because if you are in view of the eye of the emission or even too close to the edge of a building, you will start to take damage. And if it's near the end of the emission, you will almost instantly die, and it can be very frustrating. So don't get caught in it, but equally, even if you're getting antsy, don't move around. Once you've found a safe space, just stay still. I have literally died in a shelter, and it's so frustrating. The next tip is don't neglect stashes. Especially later on in the game, your map will be riddled with caches. You'll be looking at so many of them that it can be a bit overwhelming, and you might think, sod it, I'll just go do the main quests. Caches can hold blueprints, and blueprints are required to unlock certain modifications for high tier weapons. They are the only way to make the absolute most out of your weapons, so you always want to be keeping an eye out for these. There are certain websites online that literally just show you where all the blueprints are. You won't be able to get to some of them yet because of certain portals that don't exist until a certain part of the campaign, and I'll talk about them in a later tip in this video. I'll go into more detail about the portals, but yeah, try not to neglect stashes. Persevere with them, try and figure out how to get in them, whether you need to climb on the roof or unlock the door or whatever you need to do. So many stashes are very important for varying reasons, the key one being blueprints. They are so important. You know what, I won't keep you waiting, I'll talk about it right now. Portals. So once you have done the aforementioned S.T.A.L.K.E.R mission, portals will start popping up around the map, and there will be certain stashes and certain blueprints, etc., that you were absolutely tearing your hair out earlier thinking, how do I get there? And you just left them. Well, these portals are most likely the answer. Some of them can literally teleport you thousands of meters. This example here, I think I traveled like 2.6 kilometers, and now I'm on top of this ruined building and I can loot a blueprint. So sometimes you probably kind of do want to ignore the stashes if you really genuinely can't find a way there, because chances are portals are the answer, and they won't appear until after something has happened that I don't want to spoil for you. This next tip is basically don't just rely on one armor set. Late game armor sets can have such varying effects. Specifically, you kind of ideally always want to keep a radiation heavy armor set, a psi heavy armor set, and a physical heavy armor set. There is a chance that you can get one that effectively covers all three categories, but as I said earlier, it's going to cost so much to repair that you'll burn it out once and you will never ever be able to use it again. You don't really want to be upgrading your armor sets all that much, because they start to cost such stupid amounts to repair that when they're broken you can never fix them again. So if you can find a pretty good armor set that's almost on full durability as you're exploring the zone, you'll come across quite a few from the new enemy types that you encounter after the big S.T.A.L.K.E.R mission I keep talking about. Don't sell them. They will sell for a lot of money and it's very tempting to do so, but stick them in your stash and keep them spare for when yours inevitably breaks after some of the really long missions you have to deal with in the late game. This next tip, before we move on to the final one, yeah, I kind of have already covered this, but it bears repeating because it's so important, and it's all about managing your money and repair costs. This one, weirdly, sounds very counterintuitive. Don't upgrade your weapons. Don't upgrade your weapons. Again, talking about not using special ammo types, your weapons are insanely powerful anyway, at least the late game ones, and I'll be coming out tomorrow with a full tier list breakdown of the late game weapons, so you know the absolute peak weapons that you should be using. Don't stick too many upgrades into them, because the more expensive the weapon is, the more it costs to repair. And every time you modify a piece of equipment, you make it more expensive, you therefore make it cost more to repair. So yes, there are a few awesome mods that will offset the wear and tear or the repair costs because they help it be more durable, but certain ones, like increasing the range, increasing the damage, or reducing the weapon sway, stuff like that, they sound really cool at first. It's really nice to see them big bars filling up all nice and green because you've just made the perfect weapon, but it makes them cost so damn much to repair. And I currently can't use my favorite weapon in the game because I don't have 80,000 coupons lying around. In fact, I think I've got like 8. So try not to waste all your money upgrading your weapons, because you then won't have any money to repair them when they break perpetually, because they're now so valuable that the technicians charge you an arm and a leg to repair them. And this final tip is for those of you who are obsessed. You must use other ammo types, because I'm not gonna lie, they do have their uses. Some of them are pretty damn strong. Just personally, I feel like the cost isn't worth it. But if you must use them, the final tip is don't forget what ammo type you're using, because it's very easy to do so in this game, because it doesn't really tell you what you're using other than a tiny little dot at the bottom right hand corner of your screen. If anyone knows of a clearer way to tell what ammo type you're currently using, please do let me know in the comments, but I don't believe there is, apart from these few notches at the bottom right hand side of your UI. Basically how it works is regular ammo is always the one at the top, armor piercing is the one beneath that, and then there'll either be 3 or 4 notches depending on whether your currently equipped gun can also use things like expansive or flat. So for the example here, the 3rd notch is going to be expansive, and it's as simple as that. So if you are using multiple ammo types, you can keep your eye on that so you know which type of ammo you're currently using, so you can save your more powerful bullets for your more powerful enemies. That, my friends, is my top 15 tips for you of things you need to stop doing to get better at Stalker 2 and absolutely smash this game even on the hardest difficulty setting. If you have any great tips, please leave them in the comments for everyone to read. And all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.